in your transition to television,
Okay.
from being a real judge in a real courtroom, what was the adjustment you had to make, if any? What was the experience of sitting there for those first few shows and doing what theoretically you're doing in real life?
You know, I don't remember, actually. I do remember that when I was sitting in the family court, and I would take vacation for 2 weeks, the first day back, the chair wasn't exactly comfortable. You weren't in the rhythm yet, because everything has a rhythm. You know, athletes, I suppose, do it when boxers have to get into the rhythm. Ball players have spring training, you know. It's the same thing, I guess, in every profession. You have to get back into the cadence of what you do. So when I first sat on the television bench, the seat wasn't mine yet. You know, I just didn't feel the cadence. Now, having Petrie Hawkins Bird as my bailiff, who was my bailiff in the family court in Manhattan for a long time, helped because he understood. But for instance, I didn't have a stenographer in the television courtroom. We'll stop for a second. And I was used to a stenographer. And if somebody shouted out, you know, there would be consequences to that. If somebody acted out, there would be consequences to that. Well, there weren't. I mean, I have a series of guards around, but, you know, I can't do anything. You have to get used to that kind of logistics. But I think that the reason the program works as well as it does is because when a case is called, I'm focused, just like I'm focused on you. You're it for me in this hour or 2 hours that we're going to spend together. So I'm going to engage you. If I was dismissive, we wouldn't be having this kind of an interview. And because the people, the litigants, they certainly know that they're on television, but because I'm not concerned about where the cameras are or what the lighting is or whether my makeup is 100% right or if the hair isn't 100% right, that's not important. The important thing is the business of what's going on here. I mean, it has to look good, but the business of what's going on is the important thing. So the litigants really lose themselves because I'm in control. Look here. This is where we're looking. This is where the business is. It's not over here in camera 6 or camera. Other people will take care of their business. We're here. So once I found that comfortable space for myself, and I realized that I could still control my courtroom, because to me, somebody's always going to control the courtroom. And you've seen examples of people, of judges, losing control of their courtroom. I mean, you saw Judge Ito lose control of his courtroom during the O.J. trial. You know, the lawyers took over. When there's a vacuum, it's going to be filled. When that void is going to be filled. If I didn't control my space, somebody else would. So once I learned to control my space in the television courtroom, it was easy. But it took a while.
And speaking of the courtroom, you don't shoot in an actual court, but on a set.
Correct.
A television set. How does that differ? And can you describe the set as versus a real courtroom?
You know, it doesn't make any difference. After a while, it doesn't make any difference to me. I have my bench. The litigants are there. Bird is here. The gallery is there. We didn't have that kind of a gallery in the family court. You know, we had just seats for 12 or 15 people in the family courts. Here we have a gallery. I have a dressing room in the back. I had a robing room. The only difference is in between cases, we play gin rummy, because I find that when I get up to do a case, and then you come back, and you know, by the time they get another case ready, it's 5 minutes, it's 10 minutes, and your energy level goes down, then you got to bring it up again. But if I'm playing gin rummy in the back, my energy level stays at a higher level. So I'm still moving, even though I'm not working. So the set really doesn't make any difference. You bring the set with you. I mean, if you're a clown, you could sit in the Supreme Court of the United States and you're still going to be a clown. You know, the dress doesn't make the gal, neither does the suit make the guy. If you're a schmuck, you're a schmuck. You know, if you're a bimbo, you're a bimbo. You make it. It's what's in here. It's what you bring to it. So it doesn't have to have four walls. It can be a set. But this is where you work. This is your space. So I don't find any, quite frankly, any difference.
Do you think it's important for the litigants to have the same kind of reverence for the television courtroom as they would in a real courtroom?
I think it's important for them to believe and to know that I'm serious when I'm listening to them, and I'm serious about the business that we're going to accomplish in that 20 minutes time. Because if they don't believe I'm serious, I have to quickly disabuse them of that, which is the reason why it's been 14 years, and we've never had a real incident inside the courtroom. We've had incidents once they get outside, and they're outside, and the case is over, and they're talking to, you know, Bert is out there with them, and then they may go after each other, or even outside in the parking lot. But when they're with me, they don't act up. That's somebody is going to control the courtroom, and you want that person to be the judge. You don't want the nurse in an operatory to control the heart surgeon. You want the heart surgeon to do his business. And if you relegate that to an orderly, you probably end up dead. And if you relegate the control of a courtroom to someone who doesn't have the expertise, training, and acumen to run it, that's when you run into injustice, the lack of justice, the lack of semblance of propriety, lack of proper dress, lack of reasonable English, just the lack of civil behavior. I don't tolerate that.
There's a conscious decision somewhere to make the setting New York, even though it's shot in LA. Why is that?
I have no idea. You know, I don't know. I've seen it, and it doesn't make any difference to me. We started this program 14 and a half years ago. I believe in professionals. That you have to let professionals do what they do. We have two executive producers, Randy Daffert and Tim Regler. Randy and Tim have been in the business for almost as long as I'm born, although they won't like to. They probably both won't like that. But they've been in the business a very long time, and they're both pros. Tim takes care of all the nuts and bolts and makes sure that everything is squared away, which is the only way that I can operate. Court starts at 9:15, not 9:30, not a quarter to 10. I open up the set in the morning at 7:15. I'm the first one there with catering, because everybody knows that's when court starts. Court starts when I get there, and I'm ready to go with the first case. Because when we first started the program, people would show up at 9:30, quarter to 10, 10 o'clock. Well, by the end of the day, when Randy would say to me, the last case isn't here yet, and it was 3:30, 4 o'clock, I would say, what do you want me to do? Well, they'll be here in about 20 minutes. I said to him, judges don't wait for litigants. Litigants wait for judges. That's the tempo of where we are. This is a court. You have the cases ready for me. And I took my attaché case in my pocketbook and I left. And I only had to do that a half a dozen times. A couple of times where people came from New York and weren't here on time and left. And from then on, it's been a dream. Things run like a train. That's the way, the orderly process of it. Tim Rigler takes care of that. Randy Dalford's job now is to both executive produce and direct. So his job is really double trouble, because not only does he have to executive produce, which means get the cases ready, the substantive part of the work, but he has to make me look good. And with each advancing year, that becomes more difficult. Do you want to wait until this siren goes?
Sure. Okay.
So I'm going to finish the thought.
Okay.
And then we have other people who are pros that do their work. We have segment producers whose job it is to gather up the cases from the researchers who get the cases from the courts. Everybody does their job. and I do my job. My job is to adjudicate. So when we first started the program, the people who worked, many of them worked on the People's Court. They had a certain rhythm. They knew that they came in, the producers spoke to Judge Wapner, this is what the case is about. He had little blue cards. I said, that's not the way you run a courtroom. The way you run a courtroom is you have a complaint and an answer. Complaint written by the litigants stating their position, the answer by the defendant, and if there's a countersuit, the countersuit. That's what I get to read. And when a producer came in to discuss the case with me, I said, I have no interest in meeting you. You're a nice person. You do your job. I do my job. If the public wanted your opinion about how this case should be decided, they'd give you a dress, black dress with a collar, and I would be doing your job or no job. You do your job. I'm not going to interfere with the way you do your job if you do it well. And you can't interfere with the way I do my job. So we all have what we do. We don't do blue cards. We don't, we don't use somebody else's opinion. I don't take a break to go and research what the law is, go in the back and call 4 people. We do a case, start to finish, no stopping. I don't exit, come back, start to finish. That's it. I do my job. Everybody else does their job.
Retakes? No retakes?
Never. Never.
Are you the same Judge Judy on the television program as you were Judge Sheindlin before you ever even thought about being on television?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the only way I can function. I was 52 years old when I took this job. That's really a second career person. And if I had to try to change the course of the way I did business, it would not be fun for me. It would be a struggle. And I struggled a long time in the family court. Struggled to raise a family and be a full-time working mom and to have a successful career and to raise nice children. And right now, my husband and I are enjoying the benefits of a life, I like to think a life well done, a productive, both of us, productive careers. He in the Supreme Court in New York, and prior to that as a litigator, and me in the family court, and now this cushy job. And we're enjoying the fruits of it. If I had to change who I was in the work that I do, it would cease to be fun. And why?
What are your thoughts about the power of television and what you actually like to accomplish with your show?
I really didn't know what the direction of it would be and how it would be perceived, but I'll tell you how it's been perceived from the emails that I get, and we get hundreds and hundreds of emails. And my husband and I have traveled, done a great deal of traveling, far more than we did in the previous lifetime. And wherever the show airs, it's well received. We have a phenomenal audience in Ireland, in Australia, in the UK, in Israel, in Africa. And I think that there is a universal message from what I hear, the receptors, is if I could define it in one word, it's responsibility. People really want their fellow man to accept responsibility for themselves and for their actions. And I believe that there have been the last 5 or 6 decades of soft thinking. I hope we're not coming back to it, where it's not your fault if you do something wrong. The consequence is not yours for that bad act. Society will take over and take care of all of the ills of everyone. You don't have that responsibility. And the mail that I get suggests to me that I got a letter just last week, and it was from a woman who said, my husband and I are middle-class working people. We wanted a family, and we had one child. And the two of us sat down with pencil and paper, and we figured out that with our incomes, this is about as far as it could go. We want this one child to have every advantage: school, camp, college, graduate school if she wants it. And we knew that if we had 2 or 3 kids, we really couldn't do that. And despite the fact that I wanted a larger family, we said, this is what we can handle, this is what we can do. She said, and I get so frustrated sometimes, Judge, when I watch your program and I see these people who, without any thought of a consequence, bring children into the world that are destined to suffer, that are destined not to have a full, rich life because they're not acting responsibly. Fathers having children and disappearing. Grandparents taking over the responsibility of raising grandchildren because their mother's on drugs. And it's a society gone mad. And if the one word that people take away, which is the one word that resonates through all the email that I get, is responsibility. It's so nice to see someone demanding responsible behavior, even in the small microcosm of this court drama. It makes us feel good that the good guy is winning. The guy who's acting responsible is winning. And the bad guy is getting at least a tongue lashing.
Can you very briefly take me through a typical production week, that in terms of how many shows you tape a week and how many per day?
I can. I work 52 days a year. I fly out to California every other Monday, usually every other Monday, and I work Tuesday and Wednesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. They're busy all the time, doing what they do expertly, which is preparing the cases and getting me the complaint, the answer, and the countersuit, which I get by FedEx, either in Naples, Florida, which is where we live in the wintertime, or in Connecticut, where we live in the summertime. And I get those cases, and I read them over and put them away, because I don't want the nuances of freshness to be muddled by my knowing too much about. I want to generally know what the case is about. And we do the cases. We start at 9:15 in the morning, and we usually finish by 3:15 in the afternoon. And we've done a week's worth of cases in that day. That's it. It's a good job.
Can you explain how the show is, I guess, maybe technically an arbitration as opposed to an actual court of law?
Well, I'm not licensed to practice law in every state in the union. Our cases come from all over the country. But you can be an arbitrator. Anybody can be an arbitrator. You need a certain amount of training, which we like to think that if I've been a judge for 25 years, I'm able to arbitrate a small claims case. And the people sign what is called a binding arbitration. So they agree to be bound by whatever decision I make, and they withdraw whatever case they have pending in the lower small claims court.
And if there's a decision to that the plaintiff or the defendant receives some money, where does that money come from?
That money comes from the show, has a part of the production budget, pays for any out-of-pocket expense if there is a judgment. But if I order the return of property, that's done. And if I order a car transferred from one person to another and the car titled over, that's accomplished. I prepare an order and we get it to motor vehicles, and they do that. If I dismiss a case, it's dismissed for all purposes and the plaintiff loses. If I dismiss a counterclaim, it's dismissed for all purposes. So that's how it's done. And
like small claims in many states, the cap is usually about $5,000. Is that the same cap on the show?
Yes.
In terms of the most someone could get?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a lot of, assuming from what you've already said, there doesn't sound like there's a lot of editing or post-production. Is it pretty simply, is it pretty simple to put together?
I'd have to ask the experts, but my sense is at this point, it's much easier than it was in the first couple of years. because the first couple of years I tended to be a little more verbose, and I wanted to get everything. And I realized that that really wasn't possible. It's really a broad stroke business. So I think that post-production is much easier in the last 10 years.
You've referred to yourself as a truth machine. How do you spot a lie? Because you must hear a lot of them.
Life has a certain rhythm. Unless you have a mental illness, life has a certain rhythm. There's a certain common sense to life. And if something doesn't make sense to you, if you're a normal, that wide normal, it's usually not true. You know, there are these catchphrases that we learned as young people, you know, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Oh, well, that's true. And if somebody is telling you a story that doesn't make sense to you, and you're a grown-up, which is why I'm saying I was young at 39 to be a judge. I learned so much in the last 20, 25 years. So much more you learn if you have your antenna up. You learn from just being alive, if you're out there. You learn from being a parent. You learn from being a wife. You learn from being a grandparent. You learn from being an in-law. You learn from being a divorced parent. I mean, I was all of those things, and you take certain things away with all of those experiences. Did I answer your question?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
The catchphrases known as Judaisms. Judaisms, not Judaism.
Yes.
What are your favorites, and what are the viewers' favorites? What do you hear back?
I don't know. I don't know what the viewers' favorites are, but I get a lot of, I love when you say, is not an answer. Is not an answer. I haven't used stupid is not written on my forehead for a long time, but that was a favorite for many years.
Beauty fades.
Dumb is forever. Well, that's true.
And just plain baloney.
Baloney is also true.
But these come from you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And sometimes I don't know where they come from. I honestly, I walk in the back and say, where did that come from? I don't know where that came from.
But you actually say liar, liar, pants on fire, right?
I do.
But it's clear language, that's for sure.
It is clear language. Well, we had a judge in the family court who was an Ivy graduate, very blue blood. And he was talking to people who barely got out of second grade. And I got out of second grade, but even I couldn't understand him most of the time. That to me was very unfair. I mean, if you're putting somebody in jail and just saying, and you say something stupid to them, like one woman said to a young girl that she was sending to a reformatory, and the young girl started to cry. She said, I don't want you to cry. I know exactly the way you feel. When I was your age, my parents sent me to Paris for the summer, and I didn't want to go. And we all stood there with this look of incredulity. I was a prosecutor. And I said, what planet is this woman from? And I'll never, you know, I remember my parents sent me to Paris when I was 16, and I didn't want to go. There was just a disjoint in the way she related to these people. And one judge said to a young man who was 15, who he was sending away to jail, he said to him, I want you to know that this period of incarceration is going to have a very prophylactic effect on you. Meaningless, you know, meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be plain speak. So liar, liar, pants on fire, people understand. Baloney, people understand. Is not an answer. Beauty fades, dumb is forever. I want you to think about that. Think about it. Just think about what it means. It means you can make this as pretty as you like. It's up here that what's going to stay with you forever. That people understand.
And when you make these, when you have these comments and you hear back from fans or people even on the street, that besides the entertainment value of watching the show, that they actually, come away with, they may even quote them and use them in their own life. How does that make you feel?
Great. Great. The letters that I get from young people, and it's almost scary. Young people will write and say, I started to watch you when I was 10, and I'm graduating from law school now, and it's because of you. And you lose track of, how you lose track of time at a certain point, and then you say, well, it's been 14 years. You could start watching when you're 10, and now you're 24 and you're taking the bar. It's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's not even like watching your own children. It's as if a generation, fortunately it's a younger generation, because after that generation, then I flip to the next generation who take the pictures that I signed for them and have them put in their caskets when they die. I have a lot of those. Can't tell you how many times I'm mentioned in obituaries, because my husband has this thing where it Googles you every time your name is mentioned. Maurice Schwartz, he was beloved husband, father, wherever else, loved to play bridge and every afternoon watch Judge Judy. Memorial services at Riverside, Sunday at 10. It's fascinating to be part of what I perceive to be the fabric of multi-generations. They get it. Not everybody gets it. And I know that there are a lot of people that aren't fans, that think that I'm too strident, that think that I misrepresent what a court should be. And for those people, I can say to them, I'm comfortable enough in my own skin. Don't watch. But I think the message I deliver is a good one. And that message is, you're supposed to be a responsible citizen.
Is it possible to be really impartial? I mean, and not let personal feelings, views, moral, everything that you are, inform your decisions?
You are. You are what you eat. I am who I am. The fact that I may not like a litigant doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to rule against them. If what a fair and balanced approach to the law might be, but you are going to get my best judgment about what is just and fair, unencumbered by what a legislature has superimposed on just and fair. And that people sign off on that I don't use any particular statute in adjudicating my cases, because I believe that there is a common law and a common thread of what is reasonable and what is not. I don't need someone to tell me, well, the statute of limitations on that case is 2 years. If somebody brings a case that's 3 years old, I will say to them, you know what? I'm not interested in what happened 3 years ago. Memories fade. Tell me what happened yesterday. Tell me what happened last month. I don't have to resort to saying, well, the statute of limitations in your jurisdiction is 6 years on a contract, and therefore you can tell me about it, or it's 2 years on an oral contract, therefore you can't. I don't have to say that. It's logical. The law's supposed to be logical. And when it's not logical, you're supposed to be able to figure out a way to make it right. And even as a sitting judge, I tried to make it right. I tried to make the spirit of it right, even if I had to bend the letter of it a little bit. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Have you ever made a decision you really regret?
No. And I'm sure that I made decisions in my career that were wrong. But I was never motivated by anything other than wanting to do the right thing. And if you're trying thousands of cases a year, you can't look back. You can only look back if you are motivated by, well, how would it be if I beat up on this person because it's going to make my ratings better? That is an abortion of the law. What if I said, I'm really going to rush this case through because, I have an appointment tonight. I want to go home. I want to get out of here. I'm going to give you short shrift. That's not fair. But if I devote the time that I'm with you, whether it's 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and I'm giving you my best effort, and the judgment is based on that best effort, I don't look back. You know?
It being TV, did the litigants ever get stage fright?
Oh, I'm sure they do.
But you just go through, you don't stop?
No, I don't stop.
And is there ever any bad result for litigants once they've been on the show? Or conversely, have any of them become famous because of...
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm sure that there have been, you know what? I really am not tuned into that. I'm sure that some people have gone back to their home states and good things have happened or bad things have happened. Unless I hear from them, I wouldn't know.
How do you deal with the fame of being Judge Judy?
Well, I do appreciate, for instance, that without people watching the program, there wouldn't be a program. So I try to be respectful of the people who come up and say, I love your show. I say, thanks, appreciate it. Can I have an autograph? Absolutely. Will you sign my book? Absolutely. Because I understand that that's what the agreement is. I'm a fan, I'm supportive of you. You be gracious to me. I don't understand people of celebrity who are not gracious to the people that put food on their table. I really don't understand that. And it's happened to us in our lifetime before the celebrity, and it was embarrassing. I mean, we would, with two judges, we would never accost anybody, but even in a most respectful way, when you greet someone, celebrity, and if you're not respectfully received, that stays with you. And I think that experience alone is enough to make sure that you try to treat people respectfully.
A few years ago, I think it was 2002, Judge Wapner publicly criticized you for your courtroom behavior. What was your reaction, or what is your reaction?
Well, I think I reacted when he did it, didn't I?
I think so.
I think I probably said something like, I guess you missed the lesson that your mother taught, that if you don't have something nice to say nothing. Isn't that what I said?
I think so.
I'm consistent.
And then in 2003, you did an interview, or there was a piece on 60 Minutes too. Was that a retrospective? What was the occasion of you coming back? And
10 years later. It was 10 years later. I was still alive and kicking, and so was Morley. So we decided to revisit it. It was fun.
You were nominated for your first Emmy in 1998. How did that feel?
98, was it 98?
I believe so. Or maybe for the 97 season.
97 season.
Yeah.
97 season. How'd it feel? Great. I have a whole bunch of those nomination letters. And I have a whole room built for the statue, which I didn't get.
And you've gotten several nominations.
13.
The Susan
12 or 13.
Lucci of court shows, is that?
That would be me.
Now your husband, a judge also, Jerry Sheindlin, he took over for Ed Koch on the People's Court.
He did.
In the late 90s. What's the whole dynamic about A, being married to a judge, and B, a judge who has been on television? Any war stories in terms of when you were both doing it at the same time?
The only war story that comes to mind is that he beat me for a couple of days in Hartford. And he relished. I mean, he had the Hartford Gazette and the Hartford Post and the Hartford Telegraph, anything, any memorabilia from Hartford I had in my house. He wanted to move to Hartford. And I think that Jerry enjoyed the experience of television and entertainment. But I think that coming from the Supreme Court, as he did, it was much harder for him to find that comfortable place for himself with these lower rung problems not murder, not rape, not burglary, not felony sale of heroin. It was harder for him to deal with the mundane. It just wasn't his niche. And he recognized it. You know, he did it for a couple of years, and he recognized it. But I still think he had a good time with it. It was an experience. Life is about opening up to new experiences, irrespective of your age. So I don't think he regrets it for a minute.
Let's talk about the business part of your show. A few years into your show, you renegotiated so that you had a much bigger stake in the show, a bigger part of the show. How did that dawn on you to do that, and what was kind of the, you know?
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I violate confidentiality agreements or not. I don't even remember. We talked earlier in this interview about ebb and flow, about the shifting sands. And it does happen, and it happens with anybody. You know, young actors and actresses go into a movie and they work for very little, and the movie goes on to make $1 billion and is played 20 years later. You know, Al Pacino doing The Godfather. But when you do it, when you're 20 or 25, you have no leverage. And I had no leverage. When I found my leverage, I had to find my leverage. And I work for CBS now. And there was a time, even more recently, my contract was up, that I did have the choice of saying, I really want to own this show and produce it myself. Jerry and I spoke about it and decided that at my age and stage, I'm much happier keeping my life simple. The title of yet my third book, Keep It Simple, Stupid. Those people that want to build empires will take a show like mine 5 years ago and say, now my contract is up, I'm going to allow you to syndicate it, I'm going to produce it, I'm going to take on the responsibility of all the other things that you have to do, the unions and harassment and lighting and all the other stuff, and advertising. I'm a simple girl. Send me my check every Monday. I report to work. I give it my 110% of my effort, and I go home. And you deal with cutting and pasting and people and logistics and the weather and everything else. I do what I do, you do what you do. But the business of it, you do have to learn as a talent. And I think that if you are intelligent enough to learn it, you don't have to be a lawyer, but you're supposed to learn about your craft. And when I spoke to people and they said, well, if you're negotiating this new contract, you should make sure that you have provision in it for a manicurist and massage and all these things. I said, I don't want anybody else to tell me when I can have a manicure and a massage. You pay me. I'm a big girl, you know. I'm 54 years old. I'm a big girl. I'll make my own manicure appointment. I'll get my own masseuse. I'll take care of my own hair. I'll worry about buying my own clothes. You just pay me my money. I was easy. But, you know, I don't need somebody to say I need this kind of Evian to wash my hair, to rinse my hair in, and I need this kind of catering. I can deal with that. I know how to deal with that. I ran a household. So when I recognized that it was time for me to exercise my part of the ebb and flow, I did. And CBS and I now have a lovely, what I consider a lovely working relationship. There was a time when I wanted to make more money, and now there's a time that they'd like to make more money. That's the ebb and flow. Right. But we respect each other. So it's a good partnership.
In the time since your show first premiered 13 or 14 years ago, there have been numerous court shows. Some are long gone, many are still on the air. Have you or do you watch any of those shows? And if so, what do you think about the other shows?
Oh, that's a hard question. I flipped on many of them just to see. Not all of them, but many of them. And some are better than others. Some people, I think, are natural to television and others are not. I think that court television is personality-driven rather than case-driven. As opposed to somebody who writes a great script for a sitcom, it's the script that runs it. Every morning I run on the treadmill and I run to one full episode of West Wing. I've seen them all now, at least 3 or 4 times. They're on Bravo. And I watch it because of the smart writing. And when they take out one character, it doesn't destroy the ensemble because the writing is so strong. And while I love the characters, it's the writing that's strong. But in court television, there is no writing. So you're carrying the ball. You're making the soup. You're taking the stock and the carrots and the celery and the turnips and the parsley, and you have to create an interesting soup with all of that. And you can only do that if you have the kind of personality that's interesting. Some are more interesting than others.
What you just said a moment ago was that the court shows are not case-driven, but personality-driven.
Correct.
Taking that logically a step forward, would it be fair to say that the staying power of Judge Judy is because of Judge Judy?
Well, if I say yes, that seems if
Well,
I say yes, if that's true, that suggests that I have this superannuated ego, which I hate to perpetuate for posterity on this film. However, that's true. You either watch me because you like what you see. Some people watch me because they don't like what they see, but they love to hate me. And some people don't watch at all because it's not comforting to them. Joe Wapner wouldn't watch me every day because I would not be soothing to him. But it's my personality and not the litigant. I bring out the personality of the litigant so that at the end of a case, you have followed me in this journey of who's the bad guy and who's the good guy. I do that for you so that you're comfortable with the verdict at the end of it. And it takes me a couple of minutes to figure out who the good guy is and who the bad guy is, but you're coming along with that journey, and hopefully I do it for you in an entertaining fashion. Well, then it's personality driven. It's not driven by somebody who's writing the script, and the litigant's a transient. So it has to be the judge, right?
Logically speaking, yes.
That's logical. And if it's logical, it's true.
Which is why I said, is this fair to say? So
You're
I think
right.
We're right. Any cases that really stand out for you over the course of the series, or have gotten a lot of public reaction that you know of?
No. None of them stand out for me, and I don't read much about their public reaction.
Is there a favorite type of case that you like to arbitrate or deal with when you're on the show? Or?
I do best with cases that involve families and children, because that's my expertise. I mean, I like to think I can do the others too. The idiot throws the kerosene lamp into a bonfire and it explodes and hits somebody's car. That's not too difficult to deal with. But it also doesn't make very meaty television. Because, you're an idiot, and that's what idiots do, throw kerosene into bonfires. I don't know, did I answer your question?
You did. Have you ever refused to hear a case?
Yes.
What were the circumstances? Or even if it's not specific, what kind of a case would you refuse to hear?
I refuse to hear a case where I can tell from the papers or where I've seen 2 minutes of the case, seen the litigants, where one of the litigants is mentally ill or disturbed. Because it's not fair. And sometimes it's not evident to the producer who's doing, who's putting together the case. But because I have an acute sense of people, that's what, and as I said, I can't add, can't subtract, no math, don't do computers or anything else. That's my sense. I can usually tell right away if someone's off. And I won't do the case when someone's off. It's not fair, and it's dangerous. Sometimes I'm sure some slip by me, but when I know that someone is mentally tenuous, I won't do it.
How have you changed since you first started the show, if at all?
I don't know if I've changed. I actually don't know if I've changed. I've gotten older. I think in many ways I've learned lots of things. I enjoy the perks and the fruits of my labor, and I share it with those people who I love, both related and not related to me, because I think that it's such a gift that to be able to take as many people as you can on this wonderful ride at the end of the day is terrific.
You talked about after a short hiatus coming back and kind of getting back in the driver's seat and to get kind of comfortable again. Is it still interesting and is it still fun? I mean, do you still really like doing it when you get back there after all these years?
I do. And if I didn't, I would stop. We're fortunate now, after 14 seasons, so that I don't have to work anymore. And everybody will still be real comfortable, including us. But I still get a kick out of it. And it's still well received. So I will keep doing it. And, I'm signed up for another few years.
Have the litigants changed? Are they more like media savvy or looking
No.
for their 15 minutes of fame?
Same as they were 10 years ago, same as they were 12 years ago. And I say that not happily. Gratefully, but not happily.
What impact do you think Judge Judy has had on society, this show?
I think that I've inspired some young women, a lot of young women, in not only what I say, but seeing how I walk on the earth, to say, I could do that. I don't have to be somebody's doormat. All I have to do is prepare myself. I can stand up I can go in and ask for that raise. I can try going back to college. I don't have to accept this man's abuse. There are alternatives for me. You have one life to live. You're supposed to live it to the best of your ability. You have to understand that most of the time, your family, your mother, your father, and to a lesser extent your siblings, are going to be there for you forever. And the schlemiel that fathered your last child will necessarily be of a faint memory in 10 years. So don't take his side unless he's right. All those lessons, the little lessons that you learn if you open up, don't sell a used car to your favorite cousin. It's always going to come back to bite you. Don't lend money to your niece or your brother. Give them what you can and say, giving you the money, but I can't afford any more, don't come back. That way you won't lose a friend. All the life's lessons that I've learned that I can pass along, and believe me, if you throw as many of those life lessons on the wall as I have, some of them stick. Some of them stick. So I think people have learned a lot. Independence, sometimes responsibility, sometimes to take a chance in a second career. I think there are lots of good lessons.
We talked about the power of television when you were on the bench in New York before the TV show. You were changing the lives of people directly, their families, but a much smaller scale in terms of numbers. Did it occur to you when you were starting to do the television show that you potentially would be changing the lives of millions of people who watch it and take to heart some of the things that you do say and teach?
It didn't for a while. And when I realized that it was, the show became more important. I do believe, and I believe this very strongly, that if you are given the gift of celebrity, and it is a gift, you have a responsibility. And you have a responsibility to comport yourself in a responsible way. That doesn't mean all of us are not fallible one time or another in our lives. But there are so few people that get into this rarefied air that, and you are a heroine or a hero to other people. They look up to you. And if you disappoint, you're not only disappointing yourself, but you're disappointing a whole bunch of other people. Hundreds of millions of people sometimes. So you have to act responsibly.
You have you've appeared on many other television shows, playing yourself essentially. Is that just pretty much just a kick to you? I mean, do you ever think about how you might be perceived when you're back in your role on your own show as Judge Judy?
No, it's the same person. It's really the same person. As I said, if you're comfortable in your skin and you're comfortable with your convictions, there are some stock phrases that are so wonderful that stick. If you tell the truth all the time, you don't have to have a good memory. Right? If you are pandering to a particular person who was conducting an interview, or pandering to a segment of the population when you're giving a speech, you have to keep all those things in such good order. It's too difficult for me. So I am who I am. You either accept it and like it, or you don't. Watch it or not, your prerogative. But I don't change my spots.
Now, I have it on good authority that you're a Law and Order junkie.
I am a Law and Order junkie.
Do you find that show to be fairly accurate?
No. And we hate the way most of the time it depicts the judge as an idiot. And there are a lot of judges that are idiots. Make no mistake about that. But seeing the judge portrayed as a fool and making ridiculous rulings that are so inconsistent with the law in any civilized country is something that we find troublesome. However, we're still Law and Order junkies because that show has a great cadence. It has a beginning, a middle, and a 25 to 10 or 25 to 9 or 25 to 8. If they've got somebody in custody, it's usually the wrong person because they're going to get the right person at 12 minutes to. It has a cadence to it, and it's comforting. And for us, we're watching Law and Order most of the time while we're propped up in bed. And since we've seen each of them at least 4 or 5 times, when we fall asleep in the middle, we haven't lost anything.
Right. Have you enjoyed other courtroom dramas through the years, from The Defenders, Perry Mason, Law and Order, those types? Not Law and Order, but L.A. Law.
Well, L.A. Law was fun, and Boston Legal is fun. Boston Legal does not depict any law firm that I'm aware of. But certainly the characters are fascinating and fabulous, and neither did L.A. Law, actually, in my judgment. But things in L.A. are a little iffy anyway in the law with law firms. So I'm not sure how close L.A. Law was to reality. Certainly nothing like the white shoe law firms that I knew of in New York. I don't remember. I remember watching Perry Mason occasionally, but the answer is no. It's most of the time, it's just Law and Order, SVU, Law and Order, the original.
Okay, get your time check. Okay, what's your proudest career achievement?
I don't know how to answer that question. I think that I have a reputation for being an honest lady. I'm true to my word, and I have a perspective. The perspective is a consistent perspective. And It may be, some may view it as rigid, but it is who I am. I believe in right and wrong. I believe at the end of the day, what's supposed to happen at a trial is the search for the truth and getting the right answer, and a good guy wins and the bad guy loses. And I like to think that that's what I've done in my career.
Is there any one regret you have?
Yes, that I'm not taller.
What about advice you'd give to someone who aspires to be a part of daytime television?
You have to have a strong constitution. Most things fail. And it's very, very nice for me to have had success. You know, to have had this program and it be successful. I can't tell you how I would feel if I had this program and it was marginally successful enough to keep it on the air and keep me working, but not a breakout hit that it has become, and not the backbone of much of daytime. I don't know how I would feel. So it's really nice to, and not everybody can be a hit show, or can have a hit show. So I think that you really have to be, and I don't know if I could do what these kids do out here in LA, which is go to interviews and auditions time after time and get rejected. That would be devastating for me. You really have to have some sort of constitution and really love the craft to be able to go to these auditions time after time and be told, sorry, thank you, you're too old, you're too young, you're too pretty, you're too ugly, you're too tall, you're too short, you know, you're too blonde, you're too brunette. I don't know how I don't think I could do it. I think that would be devastating on your ego.
Do you consider yourself an entertainer?
Now I do. That's what I do. I entertain. Can't have show business without the show. We are in show business. I do it from the perspective of what I know, which is being a judge. But I am an entertainer. When on the doctor's form, when they ask me occupation, I write TV. That's what I write.
So what's been the secret of your success, would you say?
Gee, I don't know. I really don't know. You would probably have to ask others. I think a lot of what I get away with because of my Murray Blum comedic timing and the fact that I can be a little self-deprecating, and because I tried to show people the lunacy of their position by drawing these ridiculous analogies that people have to say, well, that's ridiculous. And I say, yeah, but that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. Don't you get it? I've got the formula. And it wasn't a formula that I fine-tuned anywhere. I came to it. That was my formula. That was my gift, because I couldn't do math, and I can't plug in a computer, and I only know how to answer my cell phone, and I have 260 text messages on my phone, and I don't know how to get them off, and I don't know how to read them. And I probably have a lot of people who don't speak to me because they text me and I don't answer them. I can't do that. But what I can do, I can do, and I can make a living at it.
What do you know for sure?
I know for sure that this gig's going to come to an end. And when it does, I will feel blessed that I am one of the few people who've had 2 fabulous careers. And I don't know what the next one will be. There could be another one. But I know that I've had 2 great careers. And some of it was hard work, and a lot of it is luck.
And how would you like to be remembered?
As a gal who was truthful and responsible, and she was fair, tough, a good friend, a good family person, reasonable person. Differed with her on many issues, but basically admired her because she was a good person.
Thank you.
Thank you.